So he can't keep out the headlines, can he, no. Mandelson? He was sacked as the ambassador to Washington because of the full scale of his links. We thought the full scale of his links to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein came to light, but then, of course, another tranche of emails and photographs came to light at the weekend, Miriam. One being the revelation that he allegedly took $75,000. $75,000 from Epstein, and there's an extraordinary photograph of him parading around Epstein's house in his underpants. Mm.
Yes, they clearly knew each other very well and were very comfortable in each other's presence. Now, of course, he does deny... he says he's no recollection of receiving the money, and one of the reasons that Mandelson has resigned from the membership of the Labour Party is so that he can go and investigate this without bringing the party into disrepute.
He's already done that.
Well, quite. He's also alleged that his husband was lent £10,000 by Jeffrey Epstein to pay for... a training course. So, yes, we are reporting on those allegations this morning. But, of course, the big question is, Andrew, why, given that it was already known about his links, not the full extent, but his links, why was Mandelson appointed as the British ambassador to Washington, D.C.?
And bear in mind, when he was sacked as ambassador, that was the third time he'd been sacked by a British Prime Minister. So Blair sacked him twice from his cabinet. Brown brought him back into the cabinet as Trade Secretary, having been a EU Trade Commissioner, then puts him in the House of Lords, and then Starmer restores his career again, even though the links about Epstein were well known and that he kept the friendship going after his conviction. Makes him ambassador, the jewel in the crown of the diplomatic service.
Absolutely. And he's clearly a man with some skills and certainly very good at building up relationships and networks, and certainly in Northern Ireland, a lot of people thought very highly of his work there in helping to bring about the peace process, but also a man with clearly a very high aptitude for risk.
Yeah, a formidable political operator, but just like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, he got too close, always, to very rich, powerful men.
Of course, I imagine that Mandelson and others, because, of course, he's absolutely not the only one who's named in these files, and there's no suggestion that Peter Mandelson did anything illegal, but obviously his association with Epstein was questionable. But these people, these rich and powerful men, must have been banking on the files never being released. Perhaps they never knew these files existed. No. Some of the extraordinary amount of detail that's recorded about them.
But cameras in every room, in every house owned by Epstein. Elsewhere, of course, the Prime Minister is suggesting that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, i.e. the former Prince Andrew, should testify to US Congress over his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. Mountbatten-Windsor's always denied any wrongdoing.
Well, we're joined now by the political commentator Paul Connew. He knows Peter Mandelson personally. Paul, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Are you surprised about these latest revelations from the Epstein files?
Not really, because I wrote a column, columns both before his appointment as ambassador in Washington and afterwards, that this was a grave mistake, not because of what was known already about his connections with Epstein, but the fact it was widely known in Washington that there was more to come. And indeed, that has emerged. You couldn't make it up. I mean, for example, if the email trails suggest that back in 2009, when Mandelson was in fact Secretary of State for Business, responding to a pressure or a request or suggestion from Epstein, he said he would lobby ministers about lifting tax on bankers' bonuses. I mean. And then it's unclear to me at the moment whether he's denying receiving the alleged $75,000 in 3 tranches in 2003 and 2004 from Epstein, or whether he's simply can't remember it. I mean, not many people can actually forget that they received $75,000. But anyway, it's also unclear whether this was a noble resignation for the sake of party by Mandelson, or whether he was leaned on rather heavily to do so. It's already emerging in Washington that Congress planned to press for Mandelson to appear before the congressional inquiry into the Epstein scandal. And hopefully the Prime Minister will echo what his call for the former Prince Andrew to do so, extend that to Peter Mandelson too. In fact, I'm going to be suggesting in the next column that perhaps the Prime Minister and King Charles should get together to press for both the former Prince Andrew and Lord Mandelson to testify in Washington for the reputational sake of both British politics and the royal family.
Paul, bearing in mind his history, having lost 2 jobs in the cabinet, and the fact that people knew about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, although Number 10 would say they didn't know the extent of it, doesn't it make it all the more reckless, frankly, of Keir Starmer to have made this man ambassador, such a high-profile role, at such a high-profile time with Trump in the White House, and knowing that those files were locked away, but not for much longer?
Precisely. It's particularly bad news for the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who was a protege of Mandelson and who lobbied very hard with Keir Starmer to give him the ambassadorial gig in Washington. And there are plenty of people on the Labour backbenches, and even some within the government who would rather see Morgan McSweeney join the sacked list. But people, but the Protestants are very attached to him. So whether that's going to happen or not, but this is power's pressure on the Prime Minister, ahead of a very difficult by-election coming up in Manchester.
Now, Paul, there are some calls in the press this morning for Mandelson to be stripped of his peerage. That would require an act of Parliament. Do you think that's something that Keir Starmer will pursue?
The pressure is going to mount on that. I mean, ideally, I think that should happen, but it's a very complicated process to actually do that. So I wouldn't bet money on it actually happening. But morally, I think it should do. I mean, he's already, as it were, stepped back from the House of Lords, not attending, etc. But you can't remove the title of Lord without, as you say, an act of Parliament. And it depends how great the pressure. It could be cross-party pressure. There are plenty of people I know on the Labour benches who welcome the Lord being dropped from the Mandelson name. I mean, this one, there's a lot. I'm told there's a lot more yet to come out on both Andrew and Mandelson, because there were still around 3 million files in the Epstein scandal that haven't yet emerged and are the subject of pressure, both political and legal, in the States. So this one is far from over. It's a ticking time bomb. It was a ticking time bomb before his appointment as ambassador. It's still a ticking time bomb. This story is far from over.
All right.
There's nothing more important than keeping your money and your identity safe online. And with so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. But this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. ExpressVPN is offering up to 73% off, plus 4 extra months free. That's top-level security from just £2.49 a month, and you're covered by their 30-day money-back guarantee. So just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code now. Remember, when you're online, you are often sharing personal data, so hackers can steal your information, your passwords, your photos, and your bank details in just seconds. But ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. So why choose ExpressVPN? Well, it couldn't be easier to use. With just one click, you are protected. And ExpressVPN uses military-grade AES 256 encryption, which is the same standard trusted by the US government to guard their classified information. With their new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely. Live chat support is available 24/7, and it typically connects you in under a minute with a real person. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 73% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 extra months free. Start protecting yourself today with ExpressVPN.
Rhiannon White's mother has called on the political establishment on GBNews, has called out the political establishment on GBNews after her daughter's brutal murder by an illegal migrant. Just take a listen.
Have you heard anything from the government? Are you looking to meet Starmer face-to-face?
I would love to meet Starmer face-to-face. The only person, political-wise, that's reached out is Darren Grimes. I know a lot of people don't like him, etc., but again, I don't care. He's been respectful towards my family. He's been respectful to me. But political-wise, not one single person has reached out.
Officially?
Officially, yeah. Not one person.
Powerful stuff. We're joined now by the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch. Mrs Badenoch, I don't know if you were able to hear much of the interview, but pretty shameful that she never heard from her local MP. It appears the political establishment shunned her. Would you speak to her?
Oh, yes, of course I would speak to her. Of course I would speak to her. I'd like the opportunity to. I think what she has suffered is absolutely horrific. It is our job as politicians to make sure that the laws in our country are enforced and people who are not supposed to be here are deported, taken away, never arrive in the first place. And the system has failed her. And I think that this is something which we need to address. It is why I have changed our immigration policy, made it much tougher. Let's leave the ECHR because we're not able to deal with so many of these issues while we are in that convention, and so much more, deporting all foreign criminals. We need to do right by a lot of people who've been failed by the system.
Now, some people will point out that had the last Conservative government waited a little bit longer before calling an election, perhaps the Rwanda plan would have been in place. Perhaps someone like this man would not have been able to come over in the first place. What's your response to that?
That may be possible. I can't do hindsight. We don't know exactly what would have happened depending on the date of the election. What we do know is that the Rwanda plan was a plan that needed to have been tried. Labour did not have to scrap that plan. We'd already spent nearly £1 billion getting it ready so that people who wanted to claim asylum would be processed in a third country and would never have arrived on UK shores. So it's not about the timing of the election. It is about Labour scrapping something which could have worked and which I believe would have worked just for political reasons, because they didn't want to do it because it was a Conservative plan. And now the Rwandan government, I'm sure you would have seen over the weekend, suing the Labour government for what looks like breach of contract. Labour are a mess again and again and again. They've got no plans, no idea what they're doing. All they care about is if it's a Conservative thing, we'll not do it. They cannot assess whether something is good or bad, and that is why they're in such a mess.
Time with you, Mrs Badenoch. Can I ask you, Peter Mandelson, he's resigned from the Labour Party. Should he now lose his peerage?
I think so. I think that people who commit crimes should not be allowed to stay in the House of Lords. If he has been proved to have committed crimes, then yes, I think we need to look at these peerages for life where people can get away with staying in the Lords even though they've been convicted of crimes. MPs are not able to do so. I think that that's something that should be looked at for life peerages as well.
Now, shifting to another topic, you may have seen in the news today that the Centre for Social Justice has done some analysis that has shown that 1 in 4 workers in Britain would actually be better off on benefits if they claimed the full sickness allowance. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few weeks about whether or not Britain is broken. Do you think our benefit system is broken?
Our benefit system is definitely broken. Our country is not, but the benefit system is. It is crazy that we have millions of people on welfare who can work but don't work. The people who cannot work, we want to look after, those who are vulnerable, genuine disabilities. But I spent most of last year giving speeches on the scandal that is taking place in our welfare system. Post-COVID, the numbers have shot up. We need to get Britain working again. That means getting people back to work and off welfare.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, Mrs Badenoch. We are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. That's Kemi Badenoch, who's the leader of the Conservative Party and His Majesty's opposition. I'm out of date.
The big story, Matthew, it's your lot again, I'm afraid. I know you've now formally severed your link with the Labour Party, but the Prime Minister's judgment yet again in giving Peter Mandelson that extraordinary job, the jewel in the crown of the diplomatic service, ambassador to America. He's now had to resign from the Labour Party because the latest tranche of stuff that's come through is so embarrassing. Not least, Matthew, the suggestion he took money, $75,000, and was lobbying to try and change a tax on bankers' bonuses.
Yeah, I mean, the 75 grand, I mean,
When he was a minister.
in the green room, I mean, I'd love to get to the point where I don't realise 75 grand
funny
goes to my or my partner's bank account every so often. That'd be great. And obviously, that was around the time he not long resigned because of his proximity to quite unsavoury tycoons, we'll call them. I also think the idea that you're giving advice to a foreign bank to go against your own government in saying, yes, threaten us mildly, that'll work well.
Because that's what he did. He was asked by Epstein, should Epstein get the chief executive, was it Chase, one of the big American banks?
JP Morgan. JP
Morgan, thank you, Annunziata, to lobby the Chancellor, Alistair Darling, as it was at the time, directly. And Mandelson said, do just that.
I just think it's the arrogance to think that you're not going to get caught for this sort of stuff. You know what you've done over the last 30 years, whatever that is, illegal or not, or just unsavoury. The idea that, oh, this is news to me, when there's bank statements and whatever else. And I just think I'd like some consistency. We've just had a Scottish MSP have to stand down at the next election because of her close friendship with somebody that was previously a sex offender. That's probably right. And she said it would cause embarrassment, similar sort of thing. The same individual was friends with Keir Starmer's former Director of Communications, and he went to go and campaign for him when he was kicked out of the Labour Party and still stood as an independent candidate for council. He got ennobled last month and is now in the House of Lords.
Is this Matthew Doyle?
Yes, Matthew Doyle. Peter Mandelson has fallen on his own sword rather than being turfed out of the Labour Party, which would be the right thing to do and propel strength from the Prime Minister, who goes, we're either consistent and care about children, violence against women and girls, any of this sort of stuff. I'm not saying Peter Mandelson's done anything, but your close proximity to somebody that clearly had, or we look after our mates when times are tough. And that's the thing that sticks in my craw.
And it is, you know, you say you care about women and girls in some contexts, and then you've got Mandelson getting a free pass, although it's one of his best friends. Yeah, he had to resign. He wasn't fired. He should have been made to step down immediately. That these are accusations, and with quite a lot seemingly of proof, that go back decades. They clearly knew about some extent of it before he was made ambassador. McSweeney personally seems to have lobbied for him to get it.
This is the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff.
Absolutely, and Starmer has backed him up. These are decisions that do go right the way back to Starmer, and he's not taking any responsibility for it.
He's clearly a very compromised individual, and I don't know him at all, but you get the impression that these moving in these circles is very, very important to him personally. But are we in danger of blurring the boundaries between what people do in private and their ability to perform the job well? And, OK, perhaps Peter Mandelson is an extreme case, but we see this so much now where someone has the slight hint of impropriety in their private life or just something irregular, and suddenly they're not eligible to stand for high office. I just think we've gone too far.
There's an aspect of that I totally agree on. I think everyone is entitled to a private life, even MPs. If you're caught having an affair, you've got to resign these days. You know, people aren't perfect, things happen. I actually remember, and I remember sticking up for him at the time, Brooks Newmark, who obviously had to resign because he was...
This is a Conservative MP.
Yeah, he was sending pictures to people totally legally, but he was sort of having... He's been in infidelity, if I remember rightly. That's up to him. The idea that they were leaked and therefore he had to resign because it was embarrassing.
Not able
that's up to him to do whatever he wants to do. I think the issue is it's embarrassing for the government when your supposed best friend, it seems, is a sex pest, has been up to illegal things, and therefore, what did you know about it?
And also, Mandelson was his best mate. He was also taking money from
he says
foreign
businessmen.
I'm not declaring it, by the way, as an MP.
Well, he's not in emphatic denial of taking the money.
No, he doesn't remember. No one other than Elon Musk has any excuse to not remember getting $75,000. It's not the kind of thing that slips the mind.
No.
He says he's got no records. Well, then he's not telling the truth to the taxman, because they should definitely have records of that level.
And I can remember the Telegraph reported when he stood down, when he was sacked as ambassador, when he was a trade secretary in Brown's government, getting involved in some deal, advising Epstein, which a clear conflict of interest. Did he declare a conflict of interest? And if he had taken money from him previously, he should have been nowhere near a business deal.
If I was going to make an excuse for Peter Mandelson, people don't turn off the telly just yet. The only way I think he could say I really didn't know, and I'm not going to cast aspersions, is the money was paid into his now husband's bank account, and it said beneficiary Peter Mandelson. Now, unless he needs to go and have a conversation with his now husband who's been saying Peter needs some money, and actually it was for him, maybe he needs to go and have a little talk about why has he been so desperate for money and not telling him. But again, that would purely be
that smells in and of itself as some kind of tax dodge that it's going to the partner. It doesn't ring true. And what kind of relationship can they have that he gets 75 grand and doesn't tell his husband?
I think I have a hunch that the money is going to be the thing that's going to really do for Peter Mandelson here. I mean, he's already done for it in a sense, but if he's incapable of showing he did not take this money, what did he do in return for the money?
I do not see how he cannot declare it, and therefore, if I was Keir Starmer, I would be putting in a report to the Standards Committee of the Lords, because that peerage needs to be looked at now.
Absolutely.
Whether you're a fit
and there's also
person.
this Brazilian flat, the 2.4 million flat in Impanina, again being bought for tax reasons, supposedly in these Epstein files, in his husband's name. It all smells very bad. But the problem comes back to Starmer, who made sure that he got the job.
Should he keep his peerage? Prince Andrew's lost every title, including ones he was born with.
Absolutely. And I think what we've seen so far, it actually looks like Mandelson has been much more badly behaved and deserves to lose everything too.
Lose the peerage?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Matthew?
Yeah, I hear what Miriam's saying, but I think the reason the public hate politicians at the minute is because people do this sort of stuff and seemingly get away with it.
Yeah.
There needs to be a bit of a judgment call here on what we consider as decent in public life.
Yes, he's
Well, I
resigned
think
to
there
Labour.
are
He could
some-
resign the peerage, couldn't he?
Quite possibly, but I think there are
hold your
some
breath.
famous individuals who are in far more trouble than Peter Mandelson
Oh, yes.
from the release of
Yeah.
these files.